Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the death of Georgia Williams, who was a 17-year-old girl that was murdered in 2013. This case was suggested by Ian when he told me to look into the man behind this heinous crime. And yeah, I found it really interesting. So thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have. And of course, if you do have any more, please do let me know. I will add them to the list and get to them eventually, because my list is getting quite long. Not that I'm saying stop giving me them, because I'm not. I'm just, yeah, you just have to bear with me and they get done when they get done, I guess. Georgia Williams was born on the 7th of September in 1995 to parents Lynette and Steve in Shropshire, England. Steve was an officer of the West Mersey Air Force. They also had another daughter who was Georgia's older sister called Scarlett. Now, Georgia was a very outgoing girl. She was such a caring young woman that just made friends so easily. She was also like a prankster that loved playing tricks on her sister. Georgia adored her family. They were all really close, and just generally she was just a loving, caring teenager. She always wanted to try and make other people happy and try and make them feel involved and like they fitted in. Like, there's nothing worse than being in a group of people and having like an outsider. She would always try and bring those outsiders in to try and make them feel included, and that is just how she lived her life. While she was in primary school, she was actually bullied apparently. Now, Lynette said that she'd bring up the school and get her moved out of that class, and Georgia said no, like she could handle it, kind of thing. And then the tables would flip when she went to high school, because she was no longer bullied. She actually became very popular, very well liked, got a lot of friends, and even became head girl. She had dreams of becoming an RAF paramedic in her adult life, and so on the side she began training as an air cadet. When she turned 17, she got her first job. It was a part-time job at a local petrol station close to her home. Now, Georgia was always a very responsible and sensible girl. She was very well trusted by her parents, because she never kind of, you know, sometimes teenagers go through that stage where they're rebellious and they just do whatever they want. Well, she never really went through that stage. She was always very reliable and had a sensible head on her shoulders. And so they always really trusted her because of that. In her job, she quickly made friends with everyone in like the group, and a man that also worked there who was kind of an outsider. He was kind of an outlier to the group. As soon as she got there, because she didn't like that sort of thing, like anyone being left out, and always wanted to make people happy, she brought him into the fold, and they all formed this like big group of friends in the place that they worked. His name was Jamie Reynolds, and he was in her sister Scarlett's year in school. So he was older than Georgia. He was 23 years old. Her family actually met him on occasion, you know, through his job and going to the petrol station, etc. And they said that he was quite a quiet person and very polite. Nobody really knew who Jamie fully was. He had some dark secrets, and we will get into those a little later on. But this case is very much one of those where you don't know who people are, truly. You honestly do not know what secrets they are hiding, who they are, truthfully, because on the outside, Jamie was a polite young man, and on the inside, he was very dark. Anyway, Jamie developed feelings for Georgia. Feelings that weren't reciprocated. She just wanted him as a friend, you know, and he tried to ask her out a few times on dates, things, to the cinema, etc. But she, in the politest way she could, because she was a very nice person, just told him that, you know, she just wanted to be friends, that she didn't see him in that way. And seemingly he was okay with that. You know, they became quite good friends, actually. They carried on spending time with each other because they were friends. And even on one occasion, Jamie was talking about what he wanted to do with his life. So he worked full-time in this petrol station. It was his full-time job, and it was not what he saw himself doing all of his life. And they discussed what he possibly saw himself doing. He told Georgia that he was actually really interested in photography. And so she's like trying to persuade him to take that up as a hobby, maybe turn that into a career, you know, if he's good enough and he can do things like that, do a portfolio. And Jamie decides that that is actually what he is going to do. And he asks Georgia if she would be a model for him so that he could create this professional like photo shoot. He'd invite some of her friends round to his parents' house. Along with Georgia, they would do this big photo shoot and he could make this professional sort of portfolio and then maybe he could work on it from that. So Georgia agrees, you know, where's the harm in taking a few photos with a group of people to help her friend? It was Sunday, the 26th of May in 2013. That was the day that they had arranged to do the photo shoot, and Georgia almost didn't go because her family were having a massive barbecue, like a massive family barbecue, and loads of her family members were actually there. And she wanted to stay, you know, she really wanted to spend the time with her family having like this nice little barbecue. But she had told Jamie that she would go. And after all, he literally lived 5 minutes down the road. So she figures, I'll nip down there, we'll take the photos, we'll be quick, and then I will come back and carry on with this lovely family barbecue kind of thing. So that's what she does. She decides that she is going to go. She goes upstairs, she gets ready, she puts on this leather jacket, puts her hair up in a ponytail, and as she's going down the stairs, her father says to her that she looks beautiful, which is actually, sadly, one of the last things that he will ever say to her. Georgia left at 7:30 p.m. and went round to Jamie's house. Now, almost 3 hours go by and Georgia has yet to come home, and so Lynette decides that she is going to text her, wondering how long this photo shoot is going to be, kind of thing, because, you know, 3 hours is a long time for just a simple little photo shoot. It was now 10 p.m. and she's wondering just when she's going to come home, how long she's planning on being out, etc. So she texts her daughter and she receives a text back that says that the photo shoot actually ended a while ago and that she was currently out with friends. Georgia always put 3 kisses on the end of her messages. This one was no different. It had the 3 kisses on the end. And it basically said that as for what time she was coming home, she wasn't sure yet. Just that it was probably going to be late and for her parents not to wait up for her. So, content that they had heard from their daughter, you know, they go to bed. And she was, as I said, very sensible. Her parents trusted her completely and therefore didn't think much of it. The problem was that it wasn't actually Georgia that was texting them. So Lynette gets up early the next morning. Georgia is still not home. Her bed has not been slept in. So she texts her again. It's 6 a.m. this time. She's asking where she's been, you know, when she plans on coming home. They haven't seen her since she left for Jamie's house, and just wondering when she's planning on showing her face. She receives a text back at 7:30 a.m. So like an hour and a half later. The text said that she ended up staying over at a friend's house and that she just forgot to text her. Another text also came through to say, actually my phone battery is dying too. Basically meaning that if she didn't reply, that would be the reason behind it. But of course that wasn't the reason, that they wouldn't be responding, and it wasn't even Georgia that was replying, but obviously they did not know that at the time. It wasn't really a thing that Georgia did. She never wanted people to worry about her, and so it kind of was out of character for her to let her phone die. And she would always tell her family members where she was because, again, she didn't want anybody to worry about her. So it was out of the ordinary for Georgia. That day on the 27th, she was due to go to a music festival with some friends. So her parents just figured that that's where she was. She had gone straight there. She didn't bother coming home because she was with her friends. And at this point, her father is speculating that maybe this is Georgia going through that rebellious stage. As I said, she never had before. And sometimes people go through it late, and maybe this is what was happening, that she just was spending a lot more time out with her friends, being a bit of a rebel and not coming home as often, you know, and that was just the stage she was going through. That is what they honestly thought. But then they're waiting all night for her to come home. They're calling her, texting her. At this point, her phone was off, and you know, you could be thinking on their part that she said her phone was dying. That's possibly why it's off. But more than likely it was turned off. They were worried, but again, they really thought that maybe she was just going through that stage. And they figured that on the Tuesday morning, she had a driving lesson booked. Now she was very excited to start driving. It was her very first lesson. And she was super excited to do it. And so that was something she would not miss. Certainly would not miss. And it got to the Tuesday morning. Georgia did not turn up for a driving lesson. And everyone began to worry then. Her mother began ringing around her friends, seeing if anyone had seen her or heard of her or had Georgia staying with them, because as far as they knew, she was staying with friends, but nobody had heard of Georgia for days, basically, at this point. At the time, Georgia had a boyfriend called Matthew. He went on to make this Facebook appeal, and the word that Georgia was missing quickly began to spread. They obviously went straight to the police, reported her as missing, but the only real information they had was that they last saw her going to Jamie's house, going to that photo shoot, and they don't know what happened to her since then, because that was all they knew, really. The police ran a quick background check on Jamie Reynolds, and that immediately threw up concern, because back in 2008, at the age of 17, he was given a final warning for attempting to strangle a 16-year-old girl. He had lured her in under false pretenses that he was offering his help with a project, and then he attempted to strangle her. The youth offending team and mental health team made visits to Jamie's house to assess this situation further. Now, I couldn't find any more on that. I don't know what came of that, so if anyone does, please do enlighten me. But his parents also told of these strange hobbies that Jamie liked to do. We'll get into that in a little bit, but these weren't illegal, and so they couldn't really do anything. Instead, his parents just tried their very best to stop him. In 2011, Jamie was put in the police radar again when he purposely ran into a colleague's car after she had rejected his advances. The problem was, no checks were made at the time. Nothing went back to link it to, his offence in 2008, and so a case was never made on that. So immediately, Jamie Reynolds was a person of interest in Georgia Williams going missing. They go to his house to speak to him. There's no lights on, there's no car in the driveway, no one was answering, and so they knocked the door in. Police had a quick look around, but there was just no sign of Jamie, and so that is when a manhunt for his whereabouts began. They checked the petrol station where they both worked. None of the co-workers had seen Jamie or Georgia, had not heard from them, and none of them had been in for the shifts. Police called Jamie's parents, who he actually lived with at the time, but they were on holiday, so they weren't around, and they informed them of everything, and his parents gave the registration of the probable van that Jamie would be using to drive around if he wasn't there. And obviously that van was missing, so Jamie must have been driving it around. The search for the van begun, mainly using CCTV and number plate recognition. Shropshire Police informed police all over the UK of this van and registration plate, and Jamie's description and Georgia's description, because by now it was 2 days after Georgia had gone missing, and they could literally be anywhere. And he was actually 218 miles away by now, in a different country. They actually found Jamie in a cheap hotel in Glasgow, Scotland, and the Glasgow police actually went ahead and arrested him. They found no sign of Georgia though whatsoever. All they could ask him, because it wasn't actually their jurisdiction or their case, was, "Where is Georgia?" And he just replied, "I don't know," and that was all they could do on it, because again, it just wasn't for them to be investigating. They had apprehended him, and he was going to be passed on to Shropshire Police so that they could obviously delve more into it and question him further. He maintained that he knew nothing of Georgia's whereabouts, but the police weren't satisfied with that. His background and things, it just didn't match up. He was the last one to be seen with Georgia, to be known to be with Georgia, with his background of strangling a girl. They arrested him and they brought him back to Shropshire for questioning. Jamie was still saying that he knew nothing about it, and he denied all allegations. The next morning at 5:30 a.m, a senior police officer goes to the Williams household and knocks on the door. Her parents, of course, answer, and they immediately knew. They had that horrible dread feeling, like the heart sinking as soon as they saw him. They knew that Georgia was no longer alive. And of course, it absolutely broke the family into pieces. Up until that point, you always have the hope that obviously your child is still alive somewhere. And then just to hear that, it's just devastating, because it just shatters everything. The police went back to Georgia's last known location, which was obviously Jamie's parents' house. They did a thorough, in-depth search, and what they stumbled across horrified even the most experienced of officers. They found Jamie's camera that obviously he was going to do the photo shoot with, right? Well, it had a memory card in it. The memory card had been wiped, but not successfully, not good enough to the point where the files were unrecoverable. Obviously, I guess not a lot of people know how to do that. He certainly didn't anyway, thank goodness. And those photos portrayed the horrific story as to what had happened to Georgia. The first images were of Georgia, just normal, you know, like she was led to be believed that this was just a normal photo shoot, and that's what they were. But they got progressively worse. The next ones were of her naked, looking very uncomfortable and very distressed. And then the ones after that were just awful. They actually showed how Georgia was murdered, and he actually hung her. Then he didn't stop taking photos there. After she was deceased, he carried on. He posed her dead body, and well, you can just imagine what he did. I don't really think it needs to be said. It was horrific. This guy is a monster, and I just don't even want to get into those details. They carried on looking through his house, and on his computer they found 16,800 images and 72 videos portraying extreme violence. At this point, his parents had flown back from the holiday, knowing everything that was going on, and they told the police that Jamie had an obsession with violent snuff films and violent sexual acts, but they had actually stopped him watching these. So they came across him watching these horrible things when he was just 14 years old. They must have walked in on him watching it or something, and they were of course mortified, and so he was watching them on his laptop. Now his laptop was something that he used for school, so it's not like they could have just taken that off him and stopped it that way. They decided that instead they were going to ring up their Wi-Fi provider and just put blocks on all these websites, so basically he couldn't get on any of them. And as far as his parents were concerned, he stopped watching them because he couldn't. But he hadn't. The thing was, at the age of 14, Jamie rang up another internet provider. He got them to provide him internet without all of these blocks on, obviously, and he was paying for it himself. So he's literally, from the age of 14, for almost 10 years at that point, been paying for his own Wi-Fi so that he can carry on with his sick obsession. They also found a lot of other things in the house, such as drawings, photos that have been sort of, I don't know, vandalized, I guess, depicting his twisted and violent nature. I mean, at this point, police knew he was guilty. Everyone knew he was guilty, but he's carrying on saying that he was innocent. They began to formulate a timeline of Jamie after George's disappearance. CCTV would play a vital role in that. A day after Georgia went missing, he was spotted on a CCTV camera at a gas station filling up his van. Little did anyone know that Georgia's body was actually in the back of that van at the time. After he killed her, he drove 60 miles to Wrexham, where he pulls up in a cinema car park, and Georgia's body is still inside that van. He goes inside and he watches a film, one of the Fast and Furious films, which apparently was one of the films that he had asked Georgia to watch with him. It was actually thought by a lot of people that this was his way of forcing her into watching a movie with him, which she never wanted to do. So he just killed her and then brought a dead body there and then watched it anyway. I don't know his kind of thinking. Seriously, I don't think many people do. So in his eyes, I guess he got his day after all, which is just sick and twisted. After that, they then lost Jamie, and they put out a public appeal for anybody that had seen this van or seen Jamie, and I believe they thought that it was probably a slim chance, because people take note of people. Say they're acting suspicious or something like that, they may take note of it, but generally, you know, are you really going to know that you saw this van or this person just driving along the road not looking suspicious at all? It was quite a slim chance, but it actually worked. A number of people came forward to say that they had actually seen Jamie because a memorable moment, they actually helped him because his van had got stuck in some mud in a mountain pass in Wales. It was North Wales. This mountain pass was surrounded by woods, which of course would have been a perfect place to hide a body. As soon as the police were informed of this location, they knew that they would soon find her body, and they did. On the 31st of May, 5 days after she had gone missing, they found the body of Georgia Williams. She was naked and was barely hidden in the woodland area. Jamie Reynolds was officially charged with Georgia Williams' murder, and no one really knew how he was going to plead because obviously all along he's claimed his innocence. On the 2nd of December 2013, he appeared at Stafford Crown Court. Now, Steve, Georgia's father said he actually watched Jamie before he entered that courtroom, and he was laughing and joking, showing no signs of remorse whatsoever. He didn't care what he'd done to Georgia, like, at all. But then apparently when he did go in, his demeanour did change and he became sort of almost childlike. Jamie Reynolds went ahead and pled guilty to Georgia's murder, which was of course a massive relief on the family. They now didn't have to go through possibly a long-winded trial. You know, it could just be over and done with, and he could be put in jail to serve the time that he should do. On the 19th of December 2013, he was given the harshest sentence possible under British law. He was given a whole life tariff order, meaning that he doesn't have a minimum sentence. He doesn't have a chance of parole. He will be in jail forever. He will never, ever, ever be released. He will die in prison. The judge actually described him as a possible serial killer. So basically, if he ever got out, more than likely he would do this again. And that is why they made sure that he will never ever get out. He became one of the youngest people in British history to receive such a sentence. Jamie Reynolds had the audacity to appeal his sentence in 2014, but the Court of Appeal said there was no way in which a whole life order could ever be appealed, and it was just flatly denied. The memory of Georgia Williams is honoured by the community and by her family, and the local community raised £2,000 for a memorial bench to be created for her. Her family also started the Georgia Williams Trust, which is this charity that helps young people pursue their passions and dreams in outdoor activities. That was something Georgia really loved. She loved being outdoorsy. She loved doing all of that kind of thing, trekking, camping, all of it. She just loved it. And so it's such a fitting tribute for Georgia. She was such a passionate and vibrant woman, and it's such a tragic loss of life. I actually found this case quite shocking. Jamie was such a violent and disturbed man, and I, for one, am glad that he will never be released. He will never see the light of day again without being behind bars. That is the best outcome anyone could have asked for. Obviously a lot of these people get out and then, you know, maybe down the line they may do it again, but he never will, which is something we all can be thankful for. My heart of course goes out to all the families. Jamie's family, like his parents really did try and stop him from doing these things, but they were unsuccessful, unfortunately. And obviously Georgia's family, those are the ones and the people touched by this case who are always left destroyed in the heartache, and the trauma that they've gone through is just horrendous. They're the ones that are left to pick up the pieces on both sides of this monster's actions, and that truly is so heartbreaking. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Georgia Williams. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.